Welcome to the GPS Training Podcast. It's our 122nd episode. And it's a special podcast this month because we've got an interview with Martin Overton, who is the Talkytoaster founder. So welcome, Martin, to the GPS Training Podcast.
Thank you, John. Nice to be here.
First of all, Martin, many listeners may have not heard of Talkytoaster maps. So what exactly are they and who are they for?
Well, probably the reason they haven't heard of me is because I don't advertise generally, and don't push things. A lot of people just find us purely by word of mouth through reviews or through third-party sites, sometimes even through the likes of Garmin, ironically. Sometimes Garmin support will point people in my direction because they don't have maps for that particular area or whatever. So basically, Talkytoaster is a third-party mapping provider for those that have Garmin devices. So that's handheld devices and increasingly watches. The data for all the maps that we produce, or I produce, because it's just me, is actually from OpenStreetMapping, and the contour data is from NASA. So it's all open source data, and I pull that down.
And how do they differ from what we find on a current outdoor GPS, something like the topo active mapping? How do they differ from that? Because that's open source data as well, isn't
It
it?
is. It's based, ironically, Garmin's own maps are Open Topo maps, or sorry, Topo Pro maps. Our Topo Active maps are actually based on the same data as I use, but they did the beauty of OSM is you can pull the data down and you decide when you create a map exactly what you want to show. So mine are very much more focused on outdoors use, so hikers, mountaineers, mountain bikers, military personnel, search and rescue to people. Um, but I also include far more detail in mine, so I expose more details. Things even go down to stiles and gates, water points, benches, marine data. So there's a lot of stuff there, and including rock outcrops as well, cave entrances, sinkholes, individual trees, tree lines. Where the data exists, there's also things like hedges, fences, walls. So if you look at the area around the Lake District, you'll see there's a lot of stone walls are actually marked up on there. Um, but the main thing is that differentiates between mine and Garmin's is not only just the detail, but also the level of contour data that's involved. Garmin's topo active maps, typically for Europe, anyway, I can say with fairly is 50-meter contours. Now that's great if you're maybe in the Alps, but it's not much use if you're on Scafell Pike because you're not really going to see a huge amount, and you're going to be not really going to understand just how challenging it can be going up and down there, or Snowdon, or Ben Nevis, or Carrantall, or wherever. So the data I use, I actually extrapolate the data out to 10 meters, so 33 feet.
Wow, that's very detailed. So really, when you pull these maps from the open source data, you actually request how much information you want. You say, I want the styles in there, I want this, and that is the difference, isn't it, really?
No, because the data is just the raw data. I pull it
Right.
all together, and then so I pull down
Okay.
the OSM data, which is the raw map data, which has all the information in it, and then I add the contour data, and then I add what I call my secret sauce, which is the style.
Yes.
But this is the place it says to when the compiler, when you compile this, this is the information to include and to
Yeah.
show, and what zoom levels, and whether you have text labels or not, um, and how to colorize it, and what polygons or icons to use. So they're all customized by myself, and that's my secret sauce, if you like. So that's why they are different. So I try to make them look as similar as I can to an OS Land Ranger map from the coloring of the path. So footpaths are red and white dotted lines. Bridleways are red and white dashed lines. Cycleways are blue and white dashed lines. Byways are marked up strictly as byways, and then there's unclassified tracks as well. But they're all routable. This is the other thing: is my maps are designed for routing off road.
Yeah. Sounds
So
perfect.
unlike the OS maps, where they typically, certainly as far as the last time I looked at them anyway, for Garmin devices, they were only routable off road in national parks,
Right.
and I think that's the same. Where mine are routable off road anywhere in or outside national parks, even in your local park, down your local stream, river, wherever. It doesn't matter. They are fully routable off road.
And you have over 500 maps now for most countries in the world, don't you?
I do them for everywhere, literally,
Yeah.
completely everywhere. So I even have maps for Antarctica because I have a
Wow.
number of scientists who go down there, or tourists that go down there on cruises to do the Antarctic Peninsula below South America, and they use my maps. I've got military personnel using my maps, including fighter pilots for the US Air Force. I've
Wow.
got search and rescue teams using them in various parts of the world, um, as well as the usual hikers, mountaineers, bikers, etc.
Fantastic. So that's a nice summary of what Talkie Toaster maps are. Inquisitive, where did the name come from?
Right. This is always one of those things. Everybody says, Talkie Toast, that sounds familiar. Um, it's as if you've ever watched Red Dwarf, you'll know about Talkie Toaster on there, where basically he is a very annoying toaster with chirpy breakfast humor that wants to actually say, is constantly pushing bread products, muffins, toast, croissants, whatever, etc. Crumpets, the lot. He would be, and he would just keep being pestering the person all the time. So you'd end up potentially eating 500 rounds of toast a day. Now,
Right.
I'm not annoying like, well, I hope I'm not annoying like that. But I started geocaching in the early 2000s, which is basically when I started doing the maps.
Yes.
I got my first Garmin GPS about the same time, and I was explaining to somebody about Red Dwarf and about the Talkie Toaster, the fact it was actually smarter than Holly, the ship's computer, which is supposed to have an IQ of over 1,000. Um, and they suddenly thought that's a really good nickname for you, so they started calling me Talkie Toaster. So when I
Right.
started geocaching, I was looking for a pseudonym, a handle, because you tend to have these sort of pseudonames that you
Yeah.
use for geocaching. And I chose Talkie Toaster. I spelled with a Y, not an IE.
Yes.
So to,
That's
to
how it
avoid
started. Yeah.
any issues with copyright and trademarks, etc.
Ah, fantastic. So let's go even further back.
Yep.
So, 35 years in IT before you
Yep.
did this full time. No, what did you do with IT?
I basically started, well, let's go back a little bit further. As a child, I spent all my time outside in the countryside, either fishing, walking, but quite increasingly climbing up and down the sides of chalk pits and cliffs. So I did a lot of scrambling with no equipment, whatever, and no fear of anything. I mean, I respected heights, but I didn't really have any fear of it as well. I had a lot of trust in my own abilities. But yeah, you try. I mean, if you ever try and scramble up scree, you know how difficult it can be. And
Mhm.
trying to do that on a chalk cliff face, which is extremely light anyway, rather than normal scree on like granite, it tends to slip a lot more. So you spend most of your time almost standing still, like it's been like a bit on a treadmill. So I spent a lot of time doing that when I wasn't reading. I spent a lot of reading as a child. Um, but then I got in. When I left school, I hoped to become a carpenter,
Okay.
but I couldn't get an apprenticeship. So my father just said to me, basically, you either get a job or you go back to school. And I wasn't going back to school. I didn't really enjoy school. I'm
Yeah.
a visual learner, an active learner, so I learn by doing.
Mhm.
So I did metalwork, woodwork, technical drawing, as well as art and the usual science and things like that. So I did all those. So I was a very shy teenager. I mean, literally, I wouldn't say boo to a goose.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought a good job would do, go and work in a shop. This
Okay,
is a
that would.
menswear shop.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I basically went to an interview as a Saturday assistant because I was still at school, hadn't quite finished school. Anyway, the manager there, he'd been around a long time. He actually worked in large stores on the mainland, and this is on the Isle of Wight.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so it's a fairly insular place down there. This is why I say, I couldn't go more than 25 miles in any one direction without falling into the sea. It was quite a safe place to be as a child, which is great. Anyway, went through the usual thing. I was talking to him, and it's the first thing he said. One of the things he said to me at the end, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was feeling a little bit cheeky. And bear in mind that I was really shy. I said, having your job.
Okay.
And he thought that was great. So he employed me. So I spent about 3 or 4 years working for them,
Mhm.
um, getting to the point where somebody would come in for a pair of socks and they go out with £300 plus worth of suits, etc. So I'm quite a
Fantastic.
good salesman. I was been told I could sell sand to Arabs and coal to Ukrainians. It's one of those things I enjoy, and it brought me out my shell. It was great.
Mhm.
Then I moved on to a couple of other jobs, and I got into computers purely by accident towards the end. I nearly ended up in the military police as well at one
Right.
point. Unfortunately, I just decided to develop asthma at that point. So
Okay.
I decided not to progress that any further because they would have kicked me out. Anyway, so when I got into computers, I was working for Boots as
Okay.
a as an assistant. So again, sort of selling them. I
Mhm.
was actually purposely brought in because I taught myself how to program on BBC Micros
Mhm.
and Sinclair ZX81. So talking about 1K of RAM here.
Yeah,
Talking
I
about
know about same
pre-internet,
era here.
yeah,
Yeah.
pre gigabytes of file storage, etc. So it was a long time ago. Anyway, I got involved with that and I taught myself how to program. So I ended up selling and helping people with computers at Boots for quite a number of years. And then I applied to a local insurer.
So were Boots selling computers at this time, were
Yeah,
they?
this is
Yeah,
when they
it's
started selling home computers. So this was things
right.
like the
Okay.
ZX81, the
Yeah.
Spectrum,
Yeah.
the Atari 400.
Yeah.
What else was there? The Dragon 64.
Hmm.
There was a number of other ones, but then they moved up. Then we saw the first word processor come in from Amstrad. So
Yes.
we had the Amstrad CPC
Yeah.
464 and their equivalents. And there were CPM machines. They weren't even running DOS. I mean, all these other ones were running
Yeah.
BASIC.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was
I know.
no real operating system per se, and the keyboards were quite appalling, apart from on the Amiga
Yeah.
or the Atari or some of the Dragon 64. Anyway,
So
so
I'm gonna let you my secret here now. I'm actually a retro computer
oh,
geek. I don't even
excellent,
realize. So
excellent,
I program in Computer Basic at weekends. I still program with my
brilliant.
Computer Basic, and I've even got ChatGPT who makes a terrible job of Computer Basic. So I stick to the old magazines and things. So yeah, I've got our office at home. Has just got old Commodores in, so I'm still programming my Commodores in the
Yeah,
weekends.
yeah. So on the ZX81, I taught myself how to program in BASIC because
Yeah,
I was a
yeah,
Sinclair BASIC. But of
yeah,
course, only had 1K of RAM, so you had what they called a RAM pack. So you
yeah,
had a 16K RAM pack you could put on the back.
yeah,
Everything was loaded to and from cassette. The trouble is, if you accidentally moved it wide after you spent hours and hours typing in a listing, the thing
yeah,
would reset itself.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
spent so many hours just sort of cursing at it. Anyway,
Fantastic.
I also taught myself assembler on that as
Right.
well. So, literally as low as you can go on the thing, apart from just writing in pure binary.
Yeah.
So I taught myself assembler. So that's how I got into computing. And then say I worked for Boots, did that for and then I got involved with a large insurer. They were looking for somebody to what they say called commissioning their PCs. So this is when the IBM PCs started to come in.
Yeah.
So I ran a department where I would take the PCs in an unfinished state with nothing loaded on them, load all the operating system, load all the applications, put in the accessory cards like mainframe terminal adapters,
Hmm.
etc., and then ship them out with a load of instructions to the end user within the company,
Brilliant.
and do support work with them as well.
Hmm.
But after this is when computer viruses started to come along. So when I had my spare time in between commissioning PCs, I was starting to research computer viruses. So things like the Vienna virus, um, a number of other brand new brain, all these new computer viruses, all these new things. Everybody was frightened to death about them. And I spent a lot of time reverse engineering them and learning about them and working out all the myths about them. If you actually put two floppy disks together, even if they weren't in a
Hmm.
machine, the virus would transfer from one to the other. No, of course it wouldn't. So you had to keep plastic covers over them, otherwise they would actually infect each other. No, they wouldn't.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like everything is a code at the end of the day. And as you know, as a coder yourself, you understand that no, code only works if it gets executed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, somebody found out in one of the other departments, the research and development department, basically at the company I was working for at the time, that I was interested in computer viruses, and they were
Wow.
looking for somebody because this was all new. They had no antivirus defenses at all, no idea of any. Nobody had any idea about it. So eventually, I ended up working in the research and development department for this particular. So this was looking at new technologies, new
Hmm.
hardware, new software, advancing threats. So I became the antivirus specialist for this company and wrote the first front end graphical front end to McAfee antivirus
Okay.
as it was
Wow.
then
Yeah.
when it was first released because it was just a command line. So I
Yeah.
wrote a shell wrapper that went round it and would actually run the application, give a progress bar, and at the end it would come back with a look at the error codes and say, yes, there's a virus found, and it would actually then have a little ambulance run across the bottom of the screen,
Yeah.
complete with a siren, so
Yeah.
everybody in the office knew that your computer was infected, or not, as the case
Fantastic.
may be.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if it didn't go off, then you just say all clear and you carry on working. And this was
Hmm.
always it ran every day automatically as they logged in.
Hmm.
And then obviously we worked through all the other different types of antivirus tools, and I got involved in intrusion detection systems as well. So that's looking for attacks coming across the internet when the internet started coming along with it's all new stuff. We had a dial-up link to the internet for the business, Email was just starting to come on. We were running multiple networking topologies.
Yeah.
So if you know about networking, there's always been two major ones. There was Ethernet
Yeah. Yeah.
with collision detection.
Right.
That was
Okay.
a silly idea, but there we go. And then there was token ring, which you passed a token and literally round a complete circle, uh, f- and that's how the data was transferred. So there was no collisions ever involved.
Right.
It was far superior IBM
Mhm.
technology, um, and that's what way they used it. But eventually, they all went to Ethernet. Ethernet
Yeah.
one. It's a bit like the VHS and Betamax
Yeah.
situation. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
one was superior to the other, but the should we say the cheapest one won out at the end of the day.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
I worked for them quite a number of years, and came up with an antivirus strategy and helped them. And then I got involved with incident response as well with them.
Right.
And then I got outsourced to because I outsourced all their IT to a large company. I don't know if you want me to mention the name of the company.
No,
Three
best
letter
not to mention.
company,
Okay.
three
Okay.
letter company. And I became their specialist in malware and anti-malware. But I also got involved with ethical hacking. So that's penetration testing.
Yeah.
So testing the
Yeah.
security of systems, online, offline, computers, and generally applications. Um, and I found I was fairly good at that. So I could get into systems that were supposedly secure,
Yeah.
online systems, obviously with all the approval of the people who own the
Yeah. Yeah.
systems. It was
Hmm.
all above board. I was known what's known as a white hat hacker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I got involved with forensics purely by accident. We had an internal issue where somebody was doing something they shouldn't have been doing. And for some reason, my name came up because of my malware background and because I was doing unethical hacking. And I was brought in and I found what they were doing. I found all the evidence, what they were doing, and they got dismissed. And in fact,
Wow.
if I remember
Okay.
right, they got criminal charges. So I ended up then setting up a forensics team for this large company, this large
Hmm.
consultancy company, for the whole of me. And I ran sort of up to 15 staff.
Right.
I got involved in all the incident response and talking when I'm talking about forensics, we're talking about forensics, not just for normal companies, but even security companies and antivirus companies who got
So these
intact.
are forensics. If something goes wrong, you investigate what
Yeah,
went
so I
wrong,
would work out
and
exactly what had happened. So
yeah.
by looking at all the timestamps, I'd image the system. So I take a
Hmm.
snapshot of the system, which was forensically sound. So I wouldn't work on the original system. I'd take a
Yeah.
snapshot of it first and then work on the snapshot.
Hmm.
And that would allow me to actually look at all the timestamps of everything that's coming in, all the internal metadata,
Yeah.
etc., and work out exactly what had been touched, what had not been touched by this person, what time they touched it,
Hmm.
whether they'd extracted the data, whether they tried to upload things, download things, etc. It was fascinating, absolutely
Wow.
fascinating. Um,
Amazing, really, isn't it? And I suppose coming from that as like the Sinclair up to there, just really progressing when technology was really progressing very, very
yep,
quickly, wasn't it? Really,
yep.
and
Yeah,
we
bear in
were
mind,
all
I went
learning
through,
as we
the
went along.
first IBM PCs,
Yeah,
through the PS2s, and then on to, I mean, I've seen for operating systems, I've seen CPM, DOS,
yeah,
uh, OS2,
yeah, yeah.
Windows NT,
Hmm.
Windows 95, or Windows 3 and above.
Yeah, 3.1. Yeah,
Um, I've seen Linux. I mean, I was messing about with Linux Slackware at the
yeah,
very early days of that as well. So I've got Linux systems here as well, which I use. I've got Windows systems. I've got Mac systems. Got involved with Mac, but it's
yeah.
always been, should we say, my least favorite, even though it's based on Unix.
Yes.
It's just the way that Apple does things sometimes. It's just completely counterintuitive.
Right. Okay.
But then again, other people say that about Windows. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's
Well,
just
that's
their
the
own.
operating system. Looking behind the operating system, or actually using the operating system. You think that with Mac?
It's both. I mean, I'm a
Hmm.
command line person. I know how to use the command line. So I'm not just a pure GUI person. I will do
Yeah, yeah,
lots of not don't just use the graphical user interface. I like to use the command line. So, for instance, with my maps, a lot of the stuff that is done repetitively every month. So all my maps get updated at least once a month,
yeah.
everywhere across the world. But the British Isles map gets updated every week. And if
Right.
I were trying to do that manually, I'd need 6 people.
Yeah,
Bear in
yeah,
mind, this is a one-man show. I
yeah,
do everything. There's no
yeah,
automation apart from some scripting.
yeah.
There's no AI. There's no
Hmm.
outsourcing. Everything is done by me. So, I look at the output of the scripts that are run, but everything is done automatically, in the
Hmm.
background, because otherwise I couldn't do it. I
So
spend most of my time talking to customers.
going back to the maps, like
Yeah.
why or how did you have this idea of like creating maps? No, because again, you don't suddenly go along and go, I think I could make a living out of this. Or like, at what point in your walk? So I suppose we need to look at walking first. So you've
Yeah.
always been an outdoor
Yeah,
enthusiast,
I've
have you?
always been
Or
outdoors, and when I got into geocaching, I would go out. I got my first Garmin GPS. It was an Etrex H,
yeah,
what they all call the old yellow peril. No
yeah,
maps,
yeah, yeah.
black and white screen, serial interface. Not very reliable, not very accurate, but it was a good introduction. And then I got an Oregon 200.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So the first touch screen, color
Hmm.
map capable Garmin device
Hmm.
I ever had. And obviously, it came with the original Garmin base maps.
Yeah.
You know how appalling they were.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
just had main roads and they weren't even drawn correctly. So if somebody was using it for road navigation, the road would be literally zigzagging.
Yeah.
So they might be looking on the screen and saying, "Hang on, according to this, I'm in the middle of a field," because it hadn't plotted the actual roads correctly because it was just a base map. So I got that, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to find some OS maps. So I bought some OS maps for the southeast of England,
Hmm.
south of England, put them on it, and I mean, as much as I love OS maps, I was brought up with OS maps. I was a cub and I was a scout. I've got a lot of respect for OS. I've got a lot of respect for Harveys, but the implementation they put on the Garmin device, certainly at that point, was extremely buggy. The resolution of the scans were extremely inferior. It was literally like somebody had taken a photograph and just scanned it, which is basically what it is. It's a raster images. Um, and you'd be out walking and suddenly the device would decide to crash for no reason whatsoever. And it was always the maps that were causing it. And I said, there must be something better out there that I can find. And somehow I stumbled onto OpenStreetMapping,
Hmm.
which is where the open source data that I use comes from and what Garmin uses and pretty much everybody else now uses. So I looked into this and said, well, what do I do with this? I mean, I know I can pull the data down. How do I compile it into a format for Garmin devices? Um, and I found out that somebody had basically reverse engineered a lot of the Garmin stuff, but it was very poorly documented. In fact, in some cases, the documentation was contradictory in places, and
Hmm.
that's still the case. So it's a bit of a black art working with this type of data. Anyway, I worked out how to pull the data down, and found out the compiler, and then I
Yeah.
started actually pulling the data together. At this point, they had no contours. So it's
Right.
just a very basic, no specific style to them. So we're using the standard OSM style, which is called Mapnik,
Hmm.
and I was just using that. But it was better than using the OS maps at that particular time on a device which was frequently crashing. And
Yeah.
then I started adding contours. So I found out about the NASA data, added that in, 10-meter contours. And then I thought, well, let me try and make this look more attractive and more like a normal paper map.
Hmm.
So I started creating a style file, which is where all the rules will say, what graphics to use. And you create all the graphics yourself. So things like the woodland graphics, you create that. The paths graphics, you create that. The stone walls graphics, the cave entrances, you name it, you do it. The gates, the styles, the lot. So you can have hundreds and hundreds of these different little graphics you have to create. And then you tell the style file when to use them and where to use them, what zoom level, etc. Whether to use text labels on them, such as peak names, for instance,
Hmm.
or for lakes or whatever. And I pulled that together, and my first, if like my first TT8, my first Talkytoaster map was born at that point, and I was
Right.
only using
Okay.
it for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would go
Okay.
out geocaching with people, and they would see my map on my display. Where the hell did you get a map from? That's brilliant. I
Yeah.
said, well, I created it myself.
Yes.
Oh, can we have a copy? Yeah, you can have a copy. And literally at the beginning, I was giving them away for free.
Yeah. Fantastic.
The problem was that people were then taking them after a while and selling them on eBay.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Even though my terms and conditions, I already had terms and conditions that clearly said these are not to be sold or resold, etc., or included on devices, the usual legal. And eBay would do nothing about it
Right. Yeah. 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 Hmm.
because they said you're not charging anything for it, therefore we can't protect it.
Yeah.
So I had to start charging at that point. And by then I'd already developed it quite extensively. This was like 5 years down the line. But I've been doing it for well over 20 years now. And
Right.
it was a side hustle, excuse me, a side hustle that's become a full-time job. Just have a quick
Hmm.
drink.
No problem.
Right. So yeah, it's a side hustle that became a full-time job.
Yeah.
And they've just been tweaked and improved. And that was just, I was only doing the British Isles originally.
Yeah.
And somebody said, well, can you do maps for the Alps, Martin? Or can you do it for France or for Italy? Or what about Japan or New Zealand? And yeah, I can pull the data down. It's just modifying the script to use a different data set, but the actual process is the same. So if you like, my master script is the same for the British Isles as it is for Antarctica, as it
Yeah.
is for Japan, as it is for parts of Russia, as it is for British Columbia, as it is
And the
for
open
Bolivia.
because the open source data is created by people, isn't it? Is
Yeah,
it so it must vary an awful lot around the world then, doesn't it? From
it
country to
does,
country or not,
but
or from region to region even.
yeah, it does. And then you get people that should we say take the mickey and add things in that they shouldn't be adding in there
Right, okay.
from time to time, but they usually get picked up very quickly nowadays because there's
Right.
quite a lot of there's probably about 100,000 regular contributors all around the world at any one time,
Hmm.
including myself. I mean, where the area I live around, Sussex, Surrey, Kent, Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, etc., a lot of the parts were personally put on there by me because they weren't on the maps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there are, and you'll also find there are other paths on there which are never going to be on an OS map.
Yeah.
They are legal rights away. The councils actually maintain them and actually support them and improve them, but they're never going to get on an OS map, and I don't know why. So, I mean, there's a number around here where they've been here 30 years and they're not on OS maps, but they're on
Wow.
my
Okay.
maps because
Yeah.
I put them on the OSM data
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
are legal rights away.
So how do you do that then? Do you just physically walk it with a GPS unit, or do you
Yeah,
just and then you would
yeah,
overlay the data on
yeah,
the map, and
indeed.
then everybody who downloads that map going forward will get that extra data
So
then,
yeah,
won't
so
they?
what you do is you go out, you walk, and if you find something that's missing or incorrect, you might tag it on you record a waypoint and you might put a little note there saying there's a style here, or this path has been moved, it's now see my other track. And you would actually upload that data to OpenStreetMapping, and then
Hmm.
you'd literally physically edit the raw data on OpenStreetMapping.
Yeah.
You would then submit it and it would go through review. If it's
Hmm.
accepted, within 24 hours or less sometimes, that data then becomes live. Next time you pull
So
that data down, it's included.
because you look at this data all the time, you must look around the country and know that there's active people like yourselves in
Yep.
specific areas because the map data in Sussex is far more detailed than in wherever in Berkshire or something like that because there is again there's just a random example, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere that people regularly walk, so all the national parks are exceptionally well mapped because there's lots of
Mhm.
people walking there, including people from overseas who come in, and there are OSM contributors as well. So they'll be actually adding their data. So it's not just me in the UK. I mean, if I was responsible for all the changes across all the maps across the world,
You'd
it
never
would
get
never
anything done.
happen.
Yeah, yeah.
But anywhere, I mean, bear in mind, I've not just done it in the UK. I've done it in the Nordics. I've done it in Canada. I've done it in North America. Sorry, in the USA. I've done it across Europe. I've done it in the Middle East myself. So
Hmm.
anywhere I go, I record data, and if I find there's errors or omissions, I will actually
Hmm.
add that data when I get back.
So when you download the open street mapping or open source mapping and then put
Yeah.
your the colors across it, your icons, etc., you must have fairly big hard drives to store all that data on then, do you?
Yes, the one behind my Mac at the moment, which is I'm talking to you on, is actually an 18 terabyte one,
Wow. Okay.
and that's
Mhm.
mainly for historical data. So I
Yes.
have maps on there going back to at least 2010.
Hmm.
So I actually have all the historical data for obviously for copyright purposes and my sort of thing, but it's also useful. So I can see every time for instance, the British Isles map. So say I compile a new version every week,
Yeah.
and that grows between 1 and 3 meg per week. And everybody says,
Right.
"Oh well, but the mountains don't move, Martin."
Yeah.
Probably correct. Occasionally, will move. You'll get
Yeah.
landslips, etc. Or you may get some other issues where, for instance, new housing development.
Yeah.
So that there's always changes being made. It may not be
Hmm.
actually in the mountains, but in some cases, let's say there's been a landslip, a well-known
Hmm.
path may be moved, and there will be within 24, 48 hours of that. If somebody there locally has actually uploaded the data, they will actually say there's now an alternative path this way, and they will have actually put it on there. And
Yeah.
this is another reason why it's so powerful, because people use it for disasters and emergencies as well. So, for instance, if there's been a major disaster or something, people will go in and they will actually update the OSM data and create new
Right.
maps for the people who are the responders.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's extremely powerful.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Never knew there was so much. So therefore, you keep the back maps just so you can look back. So if somebody gave you one of your maps from 8 years ago or
Yep.
something, you could say, right, that map produced on this day on
Yep.
and this the
Indeed, and all my maps are actually date stamped. So, for instance, I all the actual file name is the date stamp. So it's usually year, month, day, dash, then the name of the actual map. So
right.
I can always go back and say, well, I can see when you ordered your map, you would have had this particular version. You're reporting a potential error here, or it's not working. Let me test that version. I'll test it, and 99.9 to 999% of the time, it'll work perfectly on one of my devices.
Yeah.
And it's usually down to a user error, should we say? They made a slight mistake. They've not followed the instructions correctly, or something similar to that. And I will happily talk them through it. I don't have any issue with doing that, and I won't
Yeah.
rub their nose in it either.
So over the years as well, it's completely changed because you would have posted everything out on micro SD cards
Yep.
earlier on and done no downloads, would you? Was everything micro SD cards at the
No,
start?
it's always been a mixture.
Right.
Obviously, in the past, been a lot more micro SD cards because a lot of the devices had micro SD card slots, and a lot of them didn't have like they have now. I mean, nearly all the new Edge models, all the watches are all only got internal storage. Even a lot of the handhelds now have got 16 gig or more storage internally, but they still usually have a micro SD card slot as well. And I always say to people, if you've got a micro SD card slot and you've never installed maps before for yourself, third-party maps, install it to a micro SD card. Because if you make a mistake, it's simpler to actually take the card out than brick
Yeah.
your device. Because if you put the file in the wrong place on the internal storage, or you
Yeah.
accidentally put two copies of the same file in there, your device will
Hmm.
go in a boot loop,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it will fail to boot. Or you might get out of it, you might not. You might have to send it back to Garmin.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the same whether it's my maps or whether it's Garmin's maps. If you
Yeah.
make two copies of the Topo Active maps on the same device with the same,
Hmm.
with the same internal map ID, it will freeze it.
I've got to tell you a wonderful story. So, people on the podcast, I've never said this before on the podcast. We had a lady who bought a GPS unit off us a number of years ago, and she wasn't very happy because it was doing a boot loop as it
Yep,
started. And she
yep.
wasn't very happy, and she was quite raging. Oh, it's your problem. So we got the GPS back off her and plugged it into a computer, and there was an Excel spreadsheet with her kitchen pricing on for updating the kitchen. And
Okay.
it was quite funny. We rang her back up and said, she was still was quite hostile. This lady. I said, "Have you sorted?"
Mm.
Yes. How did the kitchen go? She said, "What do you mean?" So, £15,000, 15 and a half grand kitchen with this. And she said, "What are you going on about?" I said, "Well, there's an Excel spreadsheet." So she plugged it into a computer, saved her Excel spreadsheet onto the GPS device. And as it was booting up, it was reading this Excel spreadsheet, crashing all the time. So it
Interesting.
was quite funny. She just removed it and off it went and it sorted the
Yeah.
problem out. So it's quite witty, really,
I've
what we
not had a
find on
customer do
GPS
that.
units. Yeah.
I've not had a customer put an XLS file on it yet.
So,
It's
yeah.
interesting, but yes, I mean, I could say to me, people say, "Well, I put the map on the card, Martin," and I said, "Where did you put it?" "Oh, I've just put it on the card." I said, "Well, you need to create a folder called Garmin,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
need to put the map inside the Garmin folder, otherwise it will not be seen. The
Yeah.
device will just ignore it."
Yeah. That's
Oh,
exactly it.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's one of the steps people forget. I mean, even though it's in my step-by-step instructions, it clearly says with screenshots, people just some cases it usually more tends to be the more techies they are, the more they will ignore the instructions. They will just skip over them. And they're
Hmm.
there for a reason. It's not because I'm trying to teach them how to suck eggs. It's purely just there. So it's there as a base level for anybody, no matter whether techies or a complete Luddite, they can follow the instructions. If you follow the instructions, there isn't much that can go wrong.
Hmm. And are most of your maps now downloaded, or do you still post out
I still
SD
post
cards?
out cards, less cards now,
Hmm.
and mainly partly because I stopped doing cards for a short while because the price of 32 gig cards, which, as you know yourself, most Garmin devices still only support up to
Yeah.
32. There are some that now support larger, but it's very few and far between. So officially, Garmin do not support 64 gig cards, for instance.
Hmm.
32 gig is the far, and that'll even work in an old GPS Map 60
Yeah.
CSX. And
Yeah.
in fact, I've had a customer today I've been talking to about it. I said, make sure you've
Wow.
got the latest firmware. It'll see then, otherwise it won't see cards larger than 2 gigabytes.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to make sure you actually name the map a specific way, otherwise it will not be seen also.
Yeah.
So I've talked
Yeah.
him through that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I still get them, and the cards though were basically went from a point where let's say I was paying, I don't know, £7 for a card, a raw
Hmm.
card. They went up to over £30 for a raw 32 gig card, and that's ridiculous. I
It
mean,
is.
I've been this way before. 2 gig cards. You try getting a
Hmm.
2 gig card nowadays, rarer than hen's teeth.
Hmm.
4 gig
Hmm.
cards, no chance. 8 gig cards, no. 16 gig card, possibly, but you'll pay through the nose for them.
Yeah.
32 gig cards, they're going the same way.
Yeah.
What we're going to do when 32 gig cards are completely priced out the market, I do not know. Probably
It's funny
stop
because
doing them.
the smaller the card, more expensive they are now,
They
isn't
are,
it? Which
yeah.
is
It's
crazy,
purely
really, isn't
because,
it?
the mass market wants bigger cards. And yes, you can use larger cards in some of these devices, but they don't tend to be very reliable.
Yeah.
And they have to be formatted a particular way. I mean, I know people who've tried to put 64, even 256 gig cards in a GPS map 67.
Yeah.
They formatted it correctly and it does work, but
Right.
then they have all sorts of weird issues. I'm saying, well, look,
Hmm.
this device officially, according to Garmin, only supports 32 gig cards
Yeah. Yeah.
maximum.
Yeah.
And also,
Fantastic.
they sometimes are fussy on brand as well.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
So thinking of your maps then, is there any oddities within the maps that you've come across or not? Is there somewhere anywhere in the UK that there's been some grave error or something quite amusing that somebody's managed to get onto a map?
yeah, occasionally you'll find sometimes that you'll get some wit who thinks it's very amusing to put Diagon Alley in the middle of London
Right,
or
okay.
or a footpath across the M4 from time to time.
Right.
But
Okay.
they've said, as I said earlier, that very rare they get through now. And when they
Hmm.
do, they get fixed quite quickly. There's another reason why I update my maps as frequently as I
Hmm.
do, because yes, not everything changes, but there's always changes. There's always errors and omissions that need fixing by OSM. And it's not just me, as I say, it'll be anybody within the UK or anywhere in the world who may spot it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Good. Before we move on from maps, anything that we've missed there regards to maps? Any funny stories or interesting scenarios where your maps have been used?
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of customers who actually use my maps for Monroe bagging.
Right.
So, obviously doing all how many how many of a Wainwright peaks there are. Um, and I've had a number of customers who said, if it wasn't for your maps, Martin, when I was actually out Monroe bagging the other day, I was at the top of this particular Monroe and it was a complete whiteout. He said, I could have walked off a cliff.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
hear this all the time. People say, oh, use map and compass. Yes, have a map and compass with
Yeah.
you, by all means. But if you
Yeah.
can't see anything, where's your reference point?
Yeah.
And that is what really quite annoys me because some people are just so fixated about it. Whenever I go out, I always have at least two Garmin devices, use your
Hmm.
watch and a handheld device. I have two phones with OS and Harvey's maps on them where I need them. Um, and I always make sure that I have a track pre-programmed on them. I've
Hmm.
been up, I've been up Scaffold Pike in the middle of summer, Father's Day in the middle of summer, right? At bottom, it's 25 degrees and bright and sunny. You
Yeah.
get to the hollow stones and it's a whiteout,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can't see more than a meter in front of your face.
Hmm.
And you know how nondescript the hollow stones area is. If you just wandered around there, you'd end up off a cliff somewhere.
Yeah, I love it. We do a GPS in the Hills course at the end of the year, and you're aware of this, not? And I love it because we try and leave it like October as late as
Yeah.
possible. And if it's wet and miserable and misty, I'm so over the moon. I walk up and I walk into it like, and you literally. And the funny thing was, we do one in the South Downs, north in the Lake
Yep.
District. And I mean, oh, South Downs is really soft. We did the South Downs last year in the worst weather
Oh, it's
ever, and
horrible up there
we
actually.
couldn't
Bad weather.
see more than 2 meters ahead of ourselves. I was like taking loads of pictures. Like, this is really good. It
Yeah.
was absolutely brilliant, and you would have struggled to navigate
Yeah.
without a GPS unit because the visibility was horrendous. Like it was
Yeah.
horrendous. So yeah, no, totally know where you come up. And the nice thing about your maps is it shows you where the paths are often on the ground, where the ordnance
Yep.
survey mapping is where the
Yep.
right of
They
way
should be, yes.
be.
Or in
Um,
some cases where they're claimed to be, but they're not there because they've been actually introduced by OS
yeah.
as a copyright mechanism.
Right. Okay.
Okay, we've seen that a few times. People say, well, I've been up in the Lake District, Martin, using OS maps, and it says there's a path here. There's no path here, but I look at your map and I can see exactly where the path is, and it's definitely not where the same place that OS says it is.
Okay. That's the
And there's
reason why.
also other data on there. The thing might be somebody's uploaded again, as I said, like local paths that only the locals know. They're not
Hmm.
strictly rights away, but again, the councils or the local authorities maintain them
Yes.
and look after them,
Yeah.
but they're not on the OS maps. I mean, the other
Yeah.
funny story I had was one of my customers who decided to go to Cambodia
Yeah.
for a walking trip. He went there with one of my maps on his Garmin device, and he had a local guide.
Right.
And the local guy's going along and saying, we need to go this way. And the customer's looking down and saying, not according to my map, you're going the wrong way. And
Hmm.
the guide actually looked at it and he said, you're quite right. I am going the wrong way. I want that other path, the one that you pointed out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that,
Fantastic.
this is the thing, because I do maps for everywhere, it's just
Hmm.
amazing. I mean, customers come back to me and say, I used your maps in, let's say, in New Zealand to do some of the the long distance paths from the North and South Island, and they're actually
Hmm.
spot on.
Just funny, we all could keep going back to the courses here, but when we do our course, we literally go for a short walk on the
Yeah,
Saturday. And it is literally just a mile or whatever. And of course, if we're navigating a route, the customer is obsessed with this thing beeping as we go over the waypoints. So I planned on ordering a survey map, and they said, well, actually, it's not going to beep because it's incorrect. We now overlay it on some proper mapping. We overlay it on some open source mapping, and then
yeah,
we can and move the route to exactly where it should be. And then the customer gets this beep as they go over the top of the waypoint. So it
yeah,
shows that we kept with the ordnance survey mapping that inconsistency. Like I'd just be they'd be in my ear all the time saying, "No, no, it's not beepy as I go over the top of that waypoint because the waypoint is like 5 meters
yeah.
out." The
Yeah, see, I'm a
inaccuracy.
bit more old school than you. You use routes and that. I don't. I tend to use tracks
Oh well, we can debate
because I
that,
don't
I
want
guess.
it
Yeah.
to keep beeping at me.
Okay.
Because I quite often will go off piste. I'll go and actually look at something interesting, an interesting flower or something, or a rock formation or whatever, and I can still see exactly where I am in regard to my track, where I'm going to
Yes.
be. And what I will do quite often do, especially with my maps, because my maps are routable, you can create a route in Basecamp on it, which will
Yes.
snap it to the paths.
Yeah.
And then what you do is I tend to do is then I'll right click on it and I'll do convert to track and I'll
Yeah.
set the track. So it's still snapped to the paths.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
exact same, but I don't get the nasty beeps. I mean, obviously with some of the newer devices, even with tracks, it will say, it'll warn you you're actually off the track.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've
So,
got like a proximity alert.
well, on the new units, we don't have routes anymore. We just have courses on the new
Yeah, so but
H1.
this is a lot hybrid, isn't it?
So now we've got these
Yeah,
and the new Touch. We don't have routes or tracks. We just have courses, and that's the way it is. So we've had
yeah. I
that
think
thrust upon us.
one of the things I probably want to make clear is that I have no affiliation with Garmin whatsoever. I do not get paid for it. I do not work for Garmin. I have no interest in doing anything for Garmin. I mean, I'm just a recreational user basically. I have a whole load of Garmin devices here. I've got at least six Garmin watches here,
Yeah.
going from the Fenix 5X right through to the Enduro 3 and the Epix Pro 2.
So do your maps work on any other products other than Garmin?
Not, I quite often get asked, do they work on Sunto? Do they
Yeah.
work on Coros? Do they work on this one, on Navtech? Or is it two
Two
Nav?
now. Yeah. Yeah.
I quite often get asked about them. No, they don't, because they're all proprietary, closed source. Nobody's reverse engineered them. And as far as I know, nobody can do third-party maps on them yet.
Right. Okay.
Only exception to that rule is that my maps will work, as will any other Garmin image format map, uh, on Android devices
Okay.
with a third-party tool. Now, I
Yes.
can either mention
Okay.
that tool or I can't.
It's up to you. You can mention it. Yeah.
I mean, it's called Oryx Maps.
Yeah.
So they basically pull down data. They have their own map format, but one of the things they do is they have a nice Garmin map rendering engine built into it,
Okay.
and the maps look almost exactly the same as they would on a Garmin device.
Wow.
The
Okay.
only thing, of course, it won't work is the routing functions within the map. You use
Yeah.
the routing functions in the app itself.
Yes.
But I've got a lot
Yeah.
of customers who now say my eyesight's not getting so good. Can I use this on an Android device? Yes.
Yeah.
But I also get asked a lot, can I use them in Apple on Apple? No, you can't. You can't use them on your iPhone. You can't use them on your iPad
Hmm.
because there's
Hmm.
no third-party tools. There used to be.
Hmm.
They all
Hmm.
disappeared.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
no, yeah, I get lost, and I've got a big compatibility table on my site which
Yeah.
shows all the devices that I know work and also all the ones I know that don't work. So things
Mm-hmm.
like the TuneNav, like the Chorus, like the Sunto,
Hmm.
etc. All those brands. There are loads of other ones out there. Hammerhead Karoo. All those, they're all closed source. They all use the same OSM data, but of course they
Hmm.
have their own map production. And everybody says, "Oh, it's really annoying. I really want to move to this particular brand, and I'd love to use your maps on it." I'm saying the amount of work I'd need to do to try and even reverse engineer and
Yeah.
work out how to cross compile it,
Yeah.
it just is not financially viable.
No,
I
no,
mean, I
because
don't
again,
make
you.
pots of money, as I said to you before. I don't make pots of money out of this. This is a one-man band. I don't advertise. I don't want it to grow too big. I'm below the VAT threshold, and I want it to stay that way.
Hmm.
Because there's even more paperwork for me to do.
You have an amazing loyal following, don't you? Though, do you know there's a
Yeah.
lot of Talkytoaster fans, like
Yep.
massive fans, aren't they? It's a bit of a cult, really, isn't it?
It's sort of getting a little bit that way. I mean, I have a lot of people who do the spine race,
Yeah.
both the summer and the
Hmm.
winter ones. They nearly all now use my maps.
Yeah.
And Montaigne, who actually run those routes, they even came to me and said, "We're going to do a Nordic spine.
Yes.
Do you do maps for these particular Nordic companies?" I said, "Yes, I do." "Oh, well, we'll buy those and we'll use them to create the new course." So
Yeah.
they have to
Yeah.
use my own maps to create the new Nordic spine,
Wow. Brilliant. Hmm.
and the Dragon's Back, and there's lots of others. So yeah, I do have a lot of people who are it's a bit like an Apple fanboy type thing
Yeah,
in some
yeah,
cases. I
totally,
get some
totally.
customers who are really vociferous about my maps, and others that are saying, "Nah, why should I buy your maps, Martin? You know, I can get it's open source data. I can get them from free elsewhere." But it's, as I quite often say to people, it's being like a bit like being a chef against an
Hmm.
average cook, right?
Yeah,
Any you have the same ingredients.
yeah,
You can have something from something you can't boil an egg,
yeah,
something that's absolutely sublime with exactly the same. It's down to the skill of the individual who put it together. And I spent 20 years putting it together. And I've now got to the point where I don't think I can improve the maps that much more now.
no,
They
no,
have been tweaked, and it's always from customer feedback. So, for
yeah,
instance, I had customers saying to me a couple of years ago, Martin, can you change the the um, the background polygons for woodland, you
yeah,
know, mixed woodland,
hmm,
coniferous forests, etc., because I can't quite see the contours.
yeah,
I literally can't see the contours for the trees. So I said, yeah, I'll have a look at it. I actually depopulated the forests, if you like, slightly. So they're now a lot lighter in the sense that there's less trees in the polygon, and therefore you can see the contours far
hmm,
easier. And it's like everything else. And then customers have even come back to me and said, Martin, you don't have bus stops in there. Can you please add bus stops? Yeah, can do.
yeah,
And one of the last things I had added not so long ago was I added Swiss Alpine Club ratings to a lot of the
okay,
paths. So
hmm,
that data is in OSM anyway,
hmm,
and it's widely used in obviously Switzerland and mainland Europe, but it's also been added to a lot of the paths everywhere else in the world now. So you have,
hmm,
a rating from 1 to 5. One is basically it's almost a flat walk. Two,
hmm,
three, yeah, it's a bit more of a struggle. Four, it's probably a grade 1 or 2 scramble.
hmm,
Five, you need ropes and a hard hat.
yeah, yeah,
And the same
yeah,
with MTB, mountain bike. The
yeah,
same sort of rating from the German mountain bike clubs are actually applied. So you look at around Scafell Pike or Helvellyn or any of the other mountains, you'll see that, and even Ben Nevis, you'll see even on the tourist track, it'll actually tell you what the rating is on there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you get
yeah,
an idea before you even get there. And of course, the rating changes as the path progresses.
yeah,
But you may start as a T1 and it may be a T3 by the time you get to the other end.
hmm,
And it
hmm,
tells you that, which is great.
hmm,
And I've also added marine data as well. Because people can say to me, Martin, can you please add marine data? And I'm saying, well, why? Because I can't add depth data because it's not publicly available.
yeah, yeah,
But if you can just leave, even if you can put all the other stuff that's available on the open sea maps
hmm,
into your
hmm,
maps, that'll be great. So I
hmm,
did. So I've got boaters now using my maps. I've got people who
hmm,
mess about in kayaks and small boats. We've got all the navigation buoys on there where that's been added. It's got danger areas, um, offshore wind farms marked up on there. It's
hmm,
got military ranges marked up on there, anchorage points, navigation lights,
yeah,
etc., etc. And the beauty of it is normally, whether you say with marine maps, you need to have a marine device.
yes, yeah,
Guess what? You don't
you
need that
don't,
with mine.
no,
They
no,
will work, but they don't have depth data. And I'll make it
yeah,
perfectly clear to people they're not a replacement for Garmin's Blue Chart or
hmm.
Navonics or whatever they are nowadays. They're not replacements for that.
But for your kayaker or something like
For a
that, which is
kayaker and
nice.
somebody messing about with small boats, it's ideal. And even
Yeah,
um, on canals, you got all the locks are marked up, all the
right,
weirs are
okay,
marked up,
yeah,
all the
yeah,
slipways are marked up.
fantastic, yeah,
So
brilliant.
literally, I've got to the point now, so I really can't add much. And one
No,
of the other things I added not so long ago was I already had some bothies on there.
yeah,
I did weather shelters as well. So
right, okay,
all the other small ones, which are not strictly bothies, they're all there. They're all named where that data exists in OpenStreetMapping. And of course, that's the crux. Everybody says, well, does it have all the paths on?
yeah,
I would say, well, no, Ordnance Survey doesn't have all the paths on either.
yeah,
It has the paths on most of the paths at that particular time they were surveyed. Mine
yes,
will have other data that will not be on an OS map. And
hmm,
so I'm not denigrating OS at all because I think they're great and I was brought up with them. And I still always have an OS map in my backpack or a Harvey's
hmm,
map, as well as electronic versions. But I can't
hmm,
honestly remember the last time I actually ever had to use it. And that's going up places like Carrantall in
yeah,
County Kerry down in Southern Ireland
yeah, exactly
through the
right.
devil up the Devil's Ladder.
Hmm, hmm. So aside from maps, so we move on because again we've just got another 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay.
Any other unusual hobbies that you've got that people would be interested
Right.
in?
Okay, so from
I've done
the,
my research, you see, Martin. Can you tell?
yeah, from the interesting side of things, I've climbed the five highest peaks in the British Isles. So I've done Carrantall, I've done Sleeve Donaldon in the Mole Mountains in Northern Ireland, obviously Snowdon, Ben Nevis, and Scaffold Pike, and a number of other ones. I've also
Yeah.
done at least one mountain in just south of Geneva, Petit Salive, which is actually higher
Wow.
than Ben Nevis.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a scramble almost all the way up. That's an
Hmm.
amazing place to go.
Hmm.
Anyway, other things. What else have I done? Oh,
I
I
heard you. I did on my research. I heard you had some unusual pets in the past. Have you
yes, I
not?
do. Yeah, that's what I was about to come on to. So yes, unusual pets. So I've always been interested in nature anyway. So
Yeah.
anything, birds, the lot. I used to keep snakes, tarantulas, scorpions, giant African land snails, frogs, stick insects. I've even got a couple of published articles in the British Tarantula
So I
Society
believe you in the
Journal,
British. Yeah, that's exactly. Well,
as
obviously.
well as the more normal pets. So, things like guinea pigs and rabbits and dogs and cats and all the usual bits and pieces. So I've had all of those. But I've also, I also did archery as a teenager, and also did. I was also a ballroom and Latin American dancer as well in my
Okay.
teenage years, and I actually
Fantastic.
won competitions in both of those.
Wow.
So both in the archery, and I'm not kept up. So don't ask me to do a tango with you or anything now, because I wouldn't even know where to start anymore. So I've done that, and
Are you into sci-fi as well? Are you quite into
I read,
sci-fi or not?
yeah,
Or
I read huge amounts of stuff, sci-fi, and some people might call it fantasy, but I mean Terry Pratchett books specifically are but because not only is it a mixture of sci-fi stroke fantasy, but he's also a great observer of the human condition.
yeah,
I mean, he should have been a philosopher by rights, and a psychologist, because he absolutely understands the human condition, and he's very much underrated by people. So to let you read them, especially his
yeah,
later books, just don't realize just how clever he is and how knowledgeable he is. I've also spent a lot of time when I was working for large companies. I was also training people.
yeah, yeah.
I also did lots of lectures at universities. So I've lectured at universities for, in fact, one of them, the University of Warwick, I lectured at there for 15 years, double lectures. So that's two 90-minute lectures back to back
Wow.
per day when I went up there twice a year
Yeah,
to people doing master's degree. And I said I left school at 16 with CSEs. That gives you my age away.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and
And
then
then
I've done a
you
number of other places, other universities as well.
here a
Spoke
bit of
at.
a guitarist as well, are you? A bit of a musician or not?
Um,
Was that gone by the wayside?
it's gone by the wayside. I would play riffs rather than, I wouldn't call myself a guitarist. I'd love to be able to play the guitar properly, to be quite honest, but
Right,
I've never really had the time. And I certainly couldn't go through doing lots of scales all the time. My son was very, very good as a flautist. He actually
right,
passed
okay.
all his exams first time, including several with distinction.
Wow,
He was
okay.
quite accomplished, and I don't know where he got his musical genes from. And I
Hmm.
absolutely love music, and I listen to music all the time as well as reading.
Yeah. So if Martin hadn't been a cartographer, are we going to call you a cartographer? I'm going to call you a cartographer. What do you think you would have been then? A sci-fi writer or a
I don't
would you like
know.
to play in a band, or do you think you'd have maybe stuck with IT and being an ethical hacker to the end of time?
I probably would have stuck with being, working in IT. Possibly wrote. I mean, I did try to write a book many, many years ago.
Right.
Again, in my teenage years, I had this strange idea to write a book about spiders, you know, tarantulas attacking people, etc. It was at the same sort of time that certain horror novels were out around. So, the things like the rats, etc. So it was in the same similar vein to that. But again, I didn't really have the staying power for it. I'm one of these people that if I get my mind around something, I become very fixated on it. So
Yeah.
quite often people would say, I mean, certainly looking back now. There are people who've turned around and said, Martin, you're on the spectrum.
Yeah.
I've never been tested. I've got no idea, but I look at certain things that I do and the way I work, and the fact that I sometimes don't pick up on social clues, that I
Hmm.
think I am on the spectrum.
Hmm.
But
But
because that gives me that dedicated focus.
yeah, but I think most people are who I'm going to say obsessed with something, passionate
Yes.
about something is whether they're Olympic athletes or whether
Yep.
they're IT experts or whether
Yep.
they're authors are on that spectrum. And in the business world, most successful business leaders are certainly on the spectrum
Yep.
of some sort, and most of them are dyslexic as well. So
Yep.
it's interesting. I have this argument all the time, actually. everybody's individual, and actually that individual on the spectrum has got a talent that should be concentrated here rather than actually
Correct.
trying to bring them into
Right.
mainstream. Because actually, don't bring
Yeah,
them into mainstream. They're talented. They should be doing X, Y, and
exactly.
Z. They should be looking at code and finding the faults in it, etc. So yeah, I think it's interesting that most people
And
are on the
it
spectrum.
always amazes me that people say, well, why are we seeing so many people on the spectrum now? Who do they think they actually wrote the 35 volumes on the um,
Yeah,
British flowers, etc. And you've got grannies in that who are obsessive about collecting buttons and things like
yeah,
that. I'm sorry, but that's all exactly the same thing. People become obsessive about a certain thing. Collectors, people become absolutely obsessed about a particular topic. I
yeah.
mean, even uh, if it wasn't for people like that who are on the spectrum, we could probably say that people like some of the early inventors who actually were on it. And the old saying is, I think it's Thomas Edison that says, at the end of the day, invention is 99 perspiration and 1% inspiration.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly
it's
right.
having
Yeah.
the staying power to get to the point where and this is why I hate it when people come to me and say, Martin, there's an issue, and I'm saying, well, let's go through this and try and here's all the variables. Let's
Hmm.
work through them until we find the one that's causing the issue, or not, as the case may be.
That's
And
exactly right.
frequently
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah,
Let's be
yeah.
honest. But I say I'm more than happy to help people, and because I've spent so long working in customer facing roles, I
Hmm.
thoroughly enjoy helping people. I
Hmm.
really do.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some people would say, you're very patient with people at times, and yet my wife will say, God, you're really impatient.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it really depends
On what the subject
on
is.
what the subject is. Indeed, if it's something I am interested in, I can become very obsessive about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Uh, Before we finish off, I think you donate quite a bit of money to mountain rescue teams. Is that local or nationally that you've
That's nationally.
nationally?
So
Yeah.
I used to have some what I call my free maps. So these are the ones that are just in basic OSM style. So these
Yes.
are the Mapnik style ones with 10-meter contours. So they don't have DEM data and they don't have they're missing quite a lot of the other data I have in my more detailed maps. So people like those for road routing, for instance, because they do road route. They're
Hmm.
fine for that. And they have enough data for some people. Then there's even so, they're still more detailed than the Garmin Topo Active maps, ironically. So I used to give those away for free, but with an optional donation. Now, what
Right.
used to happen is I would probably get one donation per 1,000 downloads.
It's often the
And I
case,
thought, well,
isn't
this
it?
is a bit off, I'm doing it for a good cause. I'm not making
Mm-hmm.
any money out of those maps at all. Literally, I make nothing out of those maps. So
Hmm.
I said, right, okay, I think it was 2018. I said, right, I'm going to change this. You now need to pay a donation and then you can download the maps,
Yeah. Yeah.
anywhere from £5 upwards.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So I take the donations in, I store them, and when there's a certain pot of money, I will then donate that money in total and more usually.
Hmm.
So it's not
Hmm.
just that their money, it's also money I add to it to round it up
Brilliant.
to them. I mean, I think over last year, I think it was well over £1,300 when was
Wow.
donated
Fantastic. Well done.
across the British and English and Wales, Scottish mountaineering, Moor Mountain, and the Irish Rescue.
Fantastic.
Unfortunately, the Irish Rescue mountain rescue teams, their donation page has been offline for quite a while now,
Right.
and
Okay.
they haven't fixed it. And as soon as they do, I will start giving them some more money. But
That's
so I share the money out between the other three at the moment,
hmm
and I probably will have to do that after this month. I'll have another pot enough to make it a reasonable donation to each of them.
brilliant. So to finish off, if you want to know more about Talkytoaster maps, where can they find out more?
Just search Talkytoaster on your favorite search engine. I mean, you
Okay.
you can use whichever one you like. But it's Talkie with a Y,
So
and it's all
Talky toaster
yeah,
is
all one
the
word.
or one
And if you
word.
just type that in, you will find me very, very quickly because there's lots of stuff there. And because I've been doing it 20 years and my sites are quite well indexed, there are four sites though, just to
Right.
confuse
Okay.
people. There's my main site, which is talkytoaster.me.uk or .com or .info or
Yeah.
.co.uk because I have all the domain names that I own of those. That is if you like, my brochureware site, and
Yeah.
of where my free maps, the donation maps are stored, but they have links to all the other ones. And then there's my shop site, which is where my detail maps are stored, basically are offered, both
Yeah.
on cards, as electronic downloads or remote installs. So I do offer a remote install as well. So if people want to have a map quickly and they don't want to do it themselves, I can do a Zoom meeting like we are doing here, and I
Yeah.
can do a remote takeover and I can
Yeah.
install it for them.
Brilliant. Very good. So that's
And obviously I do
website.
cards.
And what's the third and fourth website? We got one. We got
Oh,
the
that's two of them. Then there's the subscription website. So that is where
okay.
people pay for a subscription instead of buying a one-off map, which they
Yeah.
don't get any updates for. So they buy
Hmm.
that as often as they wish to. If they want to update it, they buy a new one, say 2 years. I think the longest one I've had is somebody over 12 years who's phoned me up
Okay.
and say, Martin, I've had your maps for quite a while now. They're really good. I purchased them in such and such a date, no, 12 years ago. Have you done any updates? I said, take 52 and times it by the number of years, and that's the number of updates I've done.
That's a lot of updates.
So, I mean, I'll be doing them again tomorrow morning. So, for every Friday morning,
Mhm.
I'm down here doing the new maps.
Amazing.
And that's the shop site. The subscription site instead of buying a one-off, you buy access to my subscription site. It's the only site that has accounts on it,
Yeah.
and customers then basically purchase access to that for whichever country or countries they want. I mean, I do
Hmm.
map subscriptions from one country through to over 20 countries at a time.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Brilliant.
And they get access to not only the GPS version for use on their device, they also get access to dedicated Basecamp versions for
Okay.
both either a Mac or Windows.
Very good. Very
And
good.
they get access to all the updates as too for the
Hmm.
length of their subscription.
So that's the ones they can install on their PC and
Yep,
Mac, just so
exactly the
you
same.
get
So
up
it's
to
like
date. Yeah.
the automatic download where they
Yeah.
download it once,
Yeah.
but they say they can download it as often as they wish throughout the length of their subscription. The maps do not expire, they do not self-destruct. But even if at the end of their subscription, it's not like certain vendors who will say, right, your subscription's run out, you can't have access to the maps anymore. No, you
Yeah.
carry on using the same map that you last downloaded.
Fantastic. And then the final website, the fourth website
Here's my
is
support one.
okay. This is
So I have
very
a
good, actually.
dedicated
I must
support
say,
one,
it's a
which has
really good.
loads and loads of
Yeah.
frequently asked questions on it,
Yeah.
lots of configuration information, etc. And they're all interlinked anyway, so you can
Yeah.
literally go from one to the other. So for instance, if you go to my shop site and then you click on help, or sorry, FAQs, etc.
Hmm.
If you go to map FAQ, it will take you to my support site, and then
Hmm.
there you can. It's fully searchable. You can type in, help my map is all blue,
Yeah.
and it will say the reason your map is all blue is because you've not set it to on an edge. It's because you've not set the map to classic mode, and therefore it thinks everything's flooded. So you've basically got a map theme enabled,
Okay.
already designed to be used with Garmin's own maps.
Right.
Or,
Fantastic.
Martin, my map's all black. Why?
Hmm.
Because you set the color mode to auto rather than day, and it's gone into night mode because it's after dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We just change it to
It,
day, and it doesn't change anymore.
yeah. You must have spent hours on the FAQs. It's
There's
unbelievable.
20 years worth of work in there. So
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
I write them whenever I think about it. I add them in there. And it's as a living document, they just keep growing and growing, but they're fully searchable. And even things like people say, well, what card do I use? What batteries do I use in my GPS?
Hmm.
How do I
Hmm.
enable and disable maps?
Hmm.
Why am I not seeing enough detail?
Yeah.
It literally walks them through each of them, says where the menus they need to go into. And there's
Fantastic.
all the installation instructions on my shop site as well for each, including how to install Basecamp versions,
Hmm.
how to install
Hmm.
on a Fenix, an Epix, a Forerunner, Aquatics, or whatever, how to install on a micro SD card.
Yeah. All there.
All
All
there.
there. That's fantastic. So, thank you so much for joining us on this special GPS training podcast. Again, if anybody wants to, we'll just Google us as Mark said, Talkytoaster to find out more. And again, just drop him an email if you have any further questions or give him a call. And he's always very happy to speak to customers, aren't you, Martin?
I am, yes. That's one of the bits I really enjoy about my job is talking to customers, helping them. And quite often, it's not even about my map. Sometimes it's about somebody saying they have an issue with their device, and I will
Yeah.
still try to help them if I know I can.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I say, look, with the best will in the world, I'm not Garmin support.
Yeah.
I will try and help you, but you really need to go and talk to Garmin because it's really beyond mapping.
Fantastic. So thanks everybody again for joining us and joining me, and thanks for joining myself and Martin on this month's special GPS training podcast. Cheers, Martin.
Cheers.